to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another interesting and insightful conversation. Today, we welcome a friend of Goldilocks, a guest who's been on our podcast before. You've loved him, you've engaged with him, and he has some exciting information, insights, and a book to share with you. So, Coach Jim, welcome back to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks.
Dr. Kas, it's always a pleasure to see you, and it always brightens my day when I see you, even though it's on Zoom.
Absolutely. It is my honor and pleasure. So let's kick this off with your big news and your book.
Yeah, so just a quick journey. So, I was a longtime high school basketball coach and teacher, and I was blessed to be part of a inspirational story with my team manager, Jason McElwain, known as J-Mac. And so I wrote a original book with a co-author called A Coach in a Miracle. But as I've progressed in life, because I was a head coach for 30 years, and my main theme was to try to become a better leader and to build team cultures. So I really wanted to share some ideas about leadership, and I got that opportunity, and we released a book. It's an anthology, so there's a lot of authors, but I have a chapter in about my leadership principles. I have 7 keys. The book is called Lessons from Thought Leaders. So it's a pretty comprehensive book with a lot of amazing stories with people sharing different ideas on how you can be successful in life. And it was an honor to be part of it. And the interesting thing is being a person that got really into personal growth probably in my early 30s, and I'm in my 60s now, so I've been really so I study a lot of trying to be successful people, not only in coaching but leadership and also the personal development realm. And the interesting part is Jim Rohn, that was a famous speaker, and he's passed away a number of years ago. But I actually connected with his manager that managed him his last 18 years of his life, and his name is Kyle Wilson, and he's the one that was the genesis of making this book. So it's kind of a little circle for me because Jim Rohn was one of my favorite personal development coaches. So
That's amazing how life comes back full circle.
yeah,
I am curious, what got you into being a part of an anthology? Because it's a very different experience
yes,
from writing your own total book. So
right.
you're writing a chapter as part of a larger body of work with other co-authors. What was that experience like, and what did you learn about yourself in that process?
Well, I'll say a couple things. First, is that writing a chapter is certainly easier than writing a book because I have a full book that myself and a co-author did, and I know that journey. So it was a little bit easier to do a chapter without a question. The real positive that I felt out of the book was that I got to meet a lot of awesome people because we had a lot of Zoom meetings with various, people that were going to be authors in the book, and some of them I've actually connected, and we've stayed in touch. So, and also just to see a method of a gentleman that was Jim Rohn's manager, and see just how he marketed a book and all the different things that we did through. So it was a really good learning process for me. It was also a great way to share. I have these 7 leadership keys that I talk about in one of my keynotes, and I wanted to share that, with some stories behind that, and I was able to do that with the anthology.
Thank you for sharing that. Now, there's such a misnomer that leadership is a position and not power of influence from wherever you are.
Right.
Can you address that? Because leadership is a character trait, it is a position of influence and not a seat of power.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And the thing I always kid people, because I do a lot of leadership presentations to leaders, and the first thing I challenge them with a fairly simple question, and that is, who's the first person you got to lead? And after they think for a moment, they usually say myself. And I say, correct. So one of the things I encourage people is that to be a leader of influence, you really got to lead yourself well. And some of the things I talk about is, do you have a personal growth plan? Do you have a personal wellness plan? Are you taking care of your mind and your body? And those are some of the things I challenge. I'm a person of faith, but I know not all people are. But that's another choice you have to make. And then after you become better at leading yourself, because I think you gain confidence when you grow, and it starts with making and keeping promises with yourself. And I think when you start doing that more consistently, then it expands to, because as a leader of influence, you have to build trust with people. And one of the things that I really challenge leaders is that I usually ask in my presentation, how many believe that trust is important in building a successful team? And it's 100% hands. Every place I've traveled, it's the same results. But then I kind of shocked them. I said, well, how many of you have an intentional plan on how you're going to build trust? And they kind of roll back in their chair and say, no, I don't. And I said, yet if we think it's that important, why aren't we being more intentional with how we build trust? So I talked to them about our 3-point plan that we did, and just to stimulate their thinking, because it might work for them. But certainly what I want them to do is to develop what their plan of action of how they're going to build trust. Because if you're going to influence people, they have to trust you. And then the other thing is really developing that you are always on stage as a leader, and you've got to model the behaviors that you are pushing, with the team mission, the core values. When I travel around and talk to businesses, they'll talk about their core values, and then I'll say, well, does everybody clear about what the core values are? And then what are the behaviors that match those core values? I think that's a great thing that leaders have to not only share, but also consistently demonstrate with their behaviors as well. And I close with one of the things I kid leaders is, you're the CRO. And they look at me and I said, you're the chief reminding officer. It starts with you.
That is such an important reminder. What's coming up for me as I'm hearing you talk is we live in an age of everything is social media and technology driven environment where everybody is only seeing things to affirm their confirmation bias. So
Correct.
when we are constantly bombarded with what we already believe, it's very difficult to take another perspective because my perception of reality is colored by the confirmation bias I'm being fed so that I can be sold to. There
Right.
is no more knowledge or wisdom. Everything is about how do I precondition you so that I can sell to you. And you are a product that I am leveraging for my profit.
Right.
Talk to us a little bit about in this reality, how do we build trust when people are not willing to take perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question. And certainly we're seeing some of our leaders that don't do a very good job with that. But the more that I study and the more that I try to be the best leader I can be, is that the two qualities that I think, and they almost can be contradictory, and that is confidence and humility. And why I say that, because sometimes we see some people that are way too confident and have no humility, and they usually end up running over people, and usually it leads to destruction. Then you got the other side where you see some people that have no confidence and they're so humble, and you're like, come on, you got to believe in yourself. You're going to lead others. Then you're like pulling them along. So I think as you be a student of leadership, because the leadership we've talked about is an influence, is, are you confident in your beliefs with the idea that you are humble, and you also have the empathy? Because I believe the best leaders are the ones that are willing to, I know I'm using my acronyms here, but the CQA, the chief question asker, because I believe great leaders are curious. They want to know about their people. They want to build a relationship with their people because that's how you build trust. When people know you care about them, that's a great foundation. If they think you're treating them just like a cog in a wheel, not so good. And that's where trust can really be. So one of the things I really encourage leaders is you got to be consistent in lining your words and your actions because words matter and so do actions. And if they don't align, then trust is often broken.
And I see that because when words and actions are not aligned, then there is no authenticity.
Yes,
And everything appears like do what I say, don't do what I do.
right,
And that then breeds mistrust, apathy, and then everything becomes just a job and nobody's truly driving the mission, right?
correct.
So as we build on that, we live in a world where right, wrong, or indifferent, the majority in an organization, whatever that majority is, tends to believe that it's only their way that matters and they don't see another option. And let me explain to you what I mean by that.
Sure.
United States is a melting pot. There are people from different cultures, different societies all together. Even Christmas is not the same day if you're Orthodox versus modern day Christian, right?
Right.
Now, overlay in that the Hindus and the East Asians and the Islamic folks, everybody has a different New Year. Everybody has different holidays. And what I have noticed is only the majority's holidays matter.
Mm,
And even when somebody brings treats for their holiday and share it with the coworkers, everybody will eat it, but nobody will wish that person.
mm.
Why is that? What is it about the majority culture that completely ignores the existence of everybody else? And how does that then breed mistrust and dissension within the organization?
Well, you said some really powerful things, and I can't say that I have all the answers. I got some ideas, so that I'll share. But first of all, is you said a very powerful thing, and that is the mission. And having clarity of the mission, because I talk to leaders about having a personal mission statement, and it's bigger than yourself. And then also your team or organization or business mission or your school district mission, whatever it is, that's got to be bigger than yourself. And we have to get clarity on that so that, because I had a great opportunity as a basketball coach that my teams were melting pots. I had kids from different walks of life. I had kids of different skin color, different religious beliefs, different financial situations. And yet, when they came into our program, they were under the umbrella of our mission to develop winners on and off the court. And it was my job to teach them and to model what does it take to win on the court. Yes, winning on the scoreboard is part of that, but it's bigger than that. Are you a great teammate? And we try to share examples of what a good teammate is as opposed to a bad teammate. Are you someone that has a positive attitude consistently? Then off the court, are you the best student you could be? Are you a person that contributes to the community? So that's what we were trying to make our program bigger than just winning basketball games. And I think that's something as we go because the studies show that the most successful long-term businesses are ones that are open to diversity, not only of skin color and religious beliefs, but diversity of opinions. And one of the things that I think I encourage leaders, and this is something that took me a while because we have egos as leaders, is when you start using the ability to ask your team members, really show that you care about them and you want to hear from them. Because I think you go in the best direction when you get the best answers. But here's the caveat. A lot of times it's not your answer. And that's you're going back to the humility thing. And once I was able to overcome that, where, you know what, I need to do what's best for the basketball program with all the people. And that's the same thing I encourage leaders to do is what's best for everyone as we move in that common direction with common goals and a common mission and common core values. Those are things that we really got to be clear about. And then it's really getting a buy-in in living the mission on a daily basis.
I love how you brought in the ability to be curious and ask questions, because ultimately that becomes perspective taking.
Mhm.
If we cannot take perspective and we cannot look at an issue from various vantage points, because there's more than two sides to a story.
Right.
There's absolutely more than two sides. And the image that comes to my mind is we're sitting across from each other and I draw a six. To me, it's a six. To you, it's a nine. We can argue all day, and somebody can walk up on the side and say, actually, Jim and Cass, it's not a six or a nine. It's an alphabet in this other language. We're
Mm.
all right.
Right.
But right doesn't address the issue at hand. Can we take perspective and can we figure out synthesizing all of these facts? Because it's not about being right. Synthesizing all the facts and coming up with what do we need to do right now in this circumstance and how do we remain mission congruent?
Right.
That is the picture most people miss.
Yeah, I'm right with you. I'm 100% with that. And so I think that's a really important as one of the things I talk to leaders is what's your method of two things of bringing the right people on your team, or the Jim Collins famous, the right people on the bus, and then getting them on the right seats so that they become great in their roles. And then you can help them expand their roles and become better. The other thing that I think is a really big challenge for leaders, but I think when you become an excellent leader is when you see the people you lead become leaders themselves and become successful and you're happy for them. And that's another thing. It sounds good, but that took me a while, that perspective, because as a leader, you want to be someone that leads a team, in my case, to a championship, or whatever it happens to be. But when you really start seeing, and that's something I really started to change a mindset. Like when I'd see a friend in my coaching profession that won a championship, I would write him a personal note. And but early in my career, I would not have, because I was jealous. And I think that's something we really have to. So 2 points that I just want to really emphasize as leaders. If you're really going to have a great team, you got to find the best answer, what often is not your answer. And then, secondly, be happy for the success of others.
Precisely. And a lot of times history shows us people who have led organizations to success have never created their succession plan.
Yeah,
And to me, the mark of somebody being a good leader is cultivating an entire cadre of leaders so that the future of the organization is better than they found it and the better than they left it. And
yes,
that takes so much of letting go of the ego.
yes.
What advice do you have for leaders to let go of the ego? Because truly, it's the ego that gets in the way of always doing the right thing.
Right. And you know what? I'm going to share some things, but it is a challenge. And I think one thing that we all need to do personally is take time to think and reflect. Is my ego getting in the way? Ask that question to yourself a lot. And then, I was a big quote guy, so I would give my teams quote every day. And a couple of my ego quotes was, ego is edging God out. I'm a person of faith. And then another one I'll say is, if you're on our team, we put our ego behind us, and we're ready to work together. And so, those are the things so you have to address it, and you have to be clear about what is acceptable behavior and conduct on a daily basis. And one of the things that I learned, it took me some time, But as a leader, we have to praise, but we also have to correct. But well, here's the one things I've been teaching leaders. To be more effective in correcting, you got to connect first. And that's where I think they neglect, again, going back to my little example, the people on your team, in your organization, they're not spokes on wheels. They're people. And so often I think leaders forget that.
Mhm. And also, it's important for them to see the leader correcting themselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're the
Because
model.
if, yes, if the leader can take feedback from the team and recalibrate and correct themselves and learn to apologize when they have made a mistake, that sets the stage up for two things: affirming to everybody we're human and we're fallible and
Yeah,
it's okay. And two, we give permission to show up and do the best you can. And if something doesn't work out, we're all going to be there to work together to fix it and move forward without playing the blame game.
yeah, that's well said. I'll share a quick story with you. It's a small example, but I think there's some power to it. So one of the things going back to, my importance of leading by example is one of our expectations of our teams was when we would go to another school to play, our players had to wear shirt and ties. Well, I got to admit, I wear shirt and ties, but I don't love that. I'm a little bit more casual. So one game on the road, our team was in shirt and ties, and I had a collar shirt on. I did not have a shirt and tie. And when I got back to the school, I was walking out, and one of the parents was picking up one of our players. And he said, Coach, I got a question for you. You always talk about leading by example. And why do you ask your team to wear shirt and ties when you don't? And he was absolutely right. And going back to my thought and reflection, I went home and I reflected. I wasn't real happy when he addressed it to me, but he was so right. And when I thought about it, I said, you know what? I wasn't being a good model. And I will admit that I learned, Dr. Kaz, which is leaders we need to do. And every road game for the rest of my career, I wore a shirt and tie because I had to be the model.
That is a beautiful story. And it's your own journey, right? So that is that much more powerful with you
Yeah.
sharing it. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how quickly time flies.
Yeah.
So as we begin to wrap this up, what one nugget of wisdom you want to leave our audience with, and where can they find the book that you just wrote as part of the anthology?
Yeah. So absolutely. So my one, because we talked a little bit before we went recording, and the one thing that I'm really trying to push for all people is let's think of others and really focus on spreading kindness to others. As simple things as saying hello first or opening a door for some, or, it may be sending a positive note or just saying something positive to someone, even if you don't know them. But we need more kindness right now in showing that we care about each other as human beings. So that's my real encouragement. As far as the getting the book, it is on Amazon. It also is on my website if somebody want a personally signed copy, and I include a bookmark with it. And that's my website is coachjimjohnson.com. We also have a free newsletter and free weekly blog if people like to learn more about me.
Thank you so much, Coach Jim. It's been an absolute delight to have you back. I always enjoy our conversation. And thank you so much for your continued work and your continued passion to help shape the future because you work with young people in addition to working with adults, right? So thank you for all you do.
Thank you,
And
Dr. Kaz. It's always a pleasure.
my pleasure. And to our audience out there, we are living in very turbulent times. It's so easy to become selfish, inward focused, and see what's in for me and how do I make the most amount of money and connecting everything that is success to money. But please remember, we are first and foremost beginning, middle, and end. We're humans. As humans, we are feeling creatures who have the capability to act and think. So let's take our feeling, our awareness, our self awareness as the first step towards creating a community of kindness, kindness towards ourselves, kindness towards others. Because when we lead with kindness, we make connections, we make lasting impacts, and we always, always make the right choice. So please make sure you're putting kindness first, because when you find yourself in the crossroads of life, you would be happy that you built a community rooted in kindness, because you're going to need that when you find yourself in that juncture.